Hi, and welcome to the e-learning series, It's Not Just Weather, Understanding Plan 2014. This is part 4, the L limit. So what is the L limit in Plan 2014? Plan 2014's L limits are designed to maintain the St. Lawrence River velocities safe for ship navigation. By doing this, the L limit extends the length of time that Lake Ontario floods, and it prevents the year-end water reductions that are critical to minimize the risk of repeat flooding the following year. L limits are in effect all year, but they apply practically from April 1 to December 31st. When we consider the L limit, we also need to consider the critical parameter of Criterion H14. We're going to go into more detail on this in part 6 of this series. What it reads, and I quote, "In the event that Lake Ontario water levels reach or exceed high levels, the works in the International Rapids section shall be operated to provide all possible relief to the riparian owners upstream and downstream." Let's be clear, there is no relief specified for navigation during high water periods, but there is relief specified in low water periods under the criterion of H14. So we question, how does the L limit apply during these high level events? To help us understand this, we're going to introduce Bernie Gigas. He's a New York engineer with a long list of impressive credentials. Bernie, tell us about Criterion H14 and the L limit.
The way this is supposed to work is that once Lake Ontario reaches trigger levels, defined trigger levels per Plan 2014, water is supposed to be let out to provide all possible relief to riparian owners upstream and downstream of the dam. In other words, Montreal and further downstream, as well as the river upstream from the dam and Lake Ontario. In reality, during extended periods in 2017 and 19, when Lake Ontario levels exceeded the defined trigger levels, the IJC has limited Lake Ontario outflow with no or only minor concessions to the L limit. As an engineer, that is an apparent violation of Plan 2014 Criterion H14, we'll get into that in a second, and extends the duration of flooding and keeps Ontario high through fall. So let's get into the numbers. This is 2017 actual data. There are 4 lines here: an orange line that reflects Lake Ontario level on the right-hand y-axis, a turquoise line which is the defined trigger level per Plan 2014, also plotted on the right y-axis, and then a blue and a red line. The blue line is the actual Lake Ontario outflow in cubic meters per second on the left y-axis, and finally the red line is the L limit from Plan 2014. Okay, so what does this tell us? First of all, we were above Criterion H14 level, so above the trigger level, starting on May 1st, 2017. We ended above the trigger levels on 27th of August, 2017. Now, if you take a look at the blue line and the red line, the blue line approaches the red line somewhere near the middle of May, and then maintains very close proximity to the red line through really the end of the high water level time. And in particular, I'd like to draw your attention to the yellow highlight area. From May 1 to June 7, we were operating per the F limit, and so that protects the riparian owners upstream and downstream. While I think the F limit is not balanced, that is certainly in keeping with the plan as written currently. Lake Ontario outflow is in apparent violation of Criterion H14 starting on the 8th of June to the 27th of August. So that's the area that's highlighted in yellow with the text box and the pointer to it. The use of the L limit with Lake Ontario level above Criterion H14 is an 81-day apparent violation of Plan 2014 in 2017. So if we do the same thing now for 2019, again, the orange line is Lake Ontario level, the blue line is Criterion H14 trigger levels, red is the navigation limit, and blue is actual Lake Ontario outflow. From the 9th of May to the 7th of June, we were operating per the F limit. And again, that is consistent with the plan. However, from the 8th of June to today, and today is September 25th, Lake Ontario outflow is an apparent violation of Criterion H14 from 8th of June to today. Again, that's the highlighted yellow area in the middle of the plot, where the blue line falls very closely to the red line. That is not receiving all possible relief. That is providing a minimal deviation from the L limits for navigation. And if you take a look at news media releases from the IJC, they will tell you that it needs to be balanced, the outflow needs to be balanced in consideration of navigation, which under Criterion H14 should not be part of the conversation. So my projection, which really ended the 18th of September, so we're a week behind, we had an apparent violation of 103 days. And that still continues right now. So what does all that mean? So here's the year-end forecast. And this plot shows the trigger levels. That's the discontinuous blue line. And then a dark blue and a red line. The dark blue line is my calculation of the lake level as a function of incoming water and outgoing water as recorded by the IJC. The red line is the actual lake level. I started my calculation on January 1, 2017, and you can see that the red line and the blue line lay nicely on top of each other, which says two things. One, the IJC numbers are good, and two, my math is right. Now, if we take that forward from the end of May, the vertical black line, the end of June, the vertical black line, that's my forecast. So I put that together starting July 1st, and the blue line tails down and winds up at the end of the year at 245.9 feet. The red line is the actual lake level since June 1st, or July 1st, and you can see that the red line and the blue line track pretty well. So far my forecast, roughly 3 months into it, certainly still holds. If the outflows continue to be set by the L limit for navigation as they currently are, and we have a wet spring in 2020, 250 feet of lake level is foreseeable. And here's how I got to that number. So first of all, the forecast assumptions. Lake Erie outflow into Lake Ontario will continue to be at high levels. That's not much of a forecast. We know the lakes are high. Precipitation for July to December 2019 follows the same trends as 2017 and 2018, and so far that's certainly proven out to be fairly accurate. And then finally, Lake Ontario outflows are capped at the L limit for navigation plus 200 cubic meters per second. That is the official statement from the IJC dated July 25th of this year, and they have certainly stuck with that. So as you saw from the prior slide, my forecast is 245 feet, 245.9 feet by the end of the year, plus or minus 0.2. And if you take a look at the lake rise in the 3 prior years, that's the white number in the blue bars, 4.959 feet in 2017, 1.77 feet in 2018, that's fairly average, and then 3.74 feet in 2019. So if we're 245.9 feet at the end of this year, it is certainly foreseeable to be at 250 feet next year. Conclusions. Lake Ontario level rose by 3.74 feet from January 1 to June 6, 2019. If the lake level had been lowered to 244.25 feet by December 31st, 2018, we would not have widespread flooding conditions. The lake needed to be dropped more than a foot from where it actually was. The navigation limit prevented that. A good plan with effective year-end target level would have minimized flooding. We would have still been at 248 feet, which is still flooding, but minimal compared to 249 feet. And finally, the IJC is operating Plan 2014 in apparent violation of Criterion H14. Obviously, a lake level of 245.9 feet presents a potential disaster for next year. Here are some things that we can do about that. The next 2 slides have a lot of text on them. Pause the video so you can read it. I'm only going to hit the red highlighted text. In order to get the Lake Ontario level down to no higher than 245.45 feet by January 1, we need to increase Lake Ontario outflow by 500 cubic meters per second and now that we're in September, that number's increased to above that, more than the L limit for the remainder of 2019. The IJC has agreed to 200 cubic meters per second, which is what gets us to 245.9 feet. That number needs to be increased so that we can have reasonable assurance of even being at the target level that the IJC has in Plan 2014. Next, the target level at the end of the year is already too high based on what we've seen in 2017 and 2019. Under current conditions on the Ottawa River in spring, the expected conditions, the conditions that occurred in 2017 and 19, we need to change the year-end target level to no higher than 244.25 feet. If that had happened on December 31st, 2018, we would still have hit 248 feet on Lake Ontario in the middle of this year. However, we would not have hit 249 feet. There is a big difference between 248 and 249. Still flooding, but not nearly as severe, and it doesn't take 3 months to recover from it.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Up next, Part 5, What was known in advance?